Let's check out the one, the man, the legend, Matt Season Show. If you don't know Matt Season Show, you should. That's all I'll say.
Hey guys, what's up? Mad Season here, back with another video for you. Yeah, we're doing another Unreleased Secrets video. I've kind of been in the mood lately, and I wanted to start this one out with a bang. And that's Ebonlock Xena Warrior Princess Transmog, as well as this magical cube with the face. Aw, he has a little friend, that's so cute. Nah, just kidding, it's Alpha Karazhan. Before we leave Darkshire though, there's also this town crier, which I assume is here to warn people of Stitch's arrival. That's cool. I wonder why they took him out. Maybe he cried too much. But before we talk about Alpha Karazhan, I noticed that Deadwind Pass is also much different. It's missing that entire eastern road. There's just this single western path left. And leading up to the raid, it's much more open, and the building itself is absolutely huge. You can actually enter it from multiple different doors, and it's insanely big and very easy to get lost since it's obviously a work in progress and they haven't done the textures yet, so it sort of has this Superman's Fortress of Solitude thing going on. And I'll be honest, I wandered around here for over an hour trying to fully map it out, and just when I thought I had it figured out, I stumble across a new fork and get completely lost. I actually started to feel claustrophobic, which... kudos to the devs if that's what they're going for. It's pretty impressive. So, while I regret to inform you that you won't see every inch, I'll show you most of it and stick to the most interesting stuff while I talk over it here. This is what you call a dungeon, or a raid, I guess. If you didn't know, Karazhan was intended to be in vanilla, and this was one of the early versions. If you read the Warcraft Diary by former developer John Statz, he goes into detail as why it was pushed back into the Burning Crusade. It was largely due to time, but they also had a bunch of design hurdles. The history is that this isn't even the first version. Rather, that was built in 2001, and it was made before they had a real 3D modeling software. Instead, he just used the Quake editor because he had experience modding that game, and he made it completely alone. It took him about 6 months.
Let me just...
And it was so big that it took 30 minutes to load it in the software. This was all scrapped eventually, and another designer was tasked with making it with the instructions to make it tall and slender. Well, the problem with that is, as you probably guessed by now, was that there's just very little playable room, and the whole dungeon is just a collection of stairs with an odd room here and there. So that's this version, and as you know, it was scrapped obviously. And they returned the project to John Statz for a third version, where the concept was that it would be a series of disconnected towers floating around a central spire, and this was scrapped because the pathing data at the time couldn't support moving structures. Remember, this was before boats and zeppelins were added, so the designers returned with another demand, to make it as big as the upper and lower Blackrock Spire combined. And it was from this that we saw the birth of the Karazhan crypts, which were approximately the size of Lower Blackrock Spire in terms of square footage, and the tower itself was to match upper. As history showed, The developer said it was way too big now, and due to all of these changes and redos, the crypt portion was scrapped and the whole thing was pushed back to the Burning Crusade, where it became the expansion's first 10-man raid. And also, again, interesting to
Karazhan was such a good time. Was such a fun time to raid. I used to remember. I used to remember it. I do not remember anymore. I only used to remember. No, I remember that. Yeah, like Karazhan was such an just awesome raid. Awesome raid. Like it was difficult but simple enough, and it was just like the atmosphere and everything. Like it's one of the best raids that they've made.
note that at this point it isn't an instance. Again, it could be because it's an obvious work in progress, but it could also mean that this was intended to be another outdoor raid area where you would race other people for boss spawns, which again was a common thing during this era of the MMO. All in all though, this was a lot of work for it to never see the light of day. It's definitely one of the most labyrinthine dungeons I've seen. I personally think it's more complicated than BRD, but that might just be because it's untextured, so it's really hard to navigate because everything looks the same. I don't know about you, but looking at this is starting to give me a headache, so let's move on. Before we do that though, do you have time to discuss the premier meal replacement brand, Control? Let's just be real here for a moment. Gamers and healthy diets are two things that aren't really known to have a lot of overlap, but that's where Control steps in. They've created healthier and more convenient food options designed specifically for people who live the gamer's life. First is their meal replacement shakes, which have just 1 gram of sugar and are packed with fiber and good carbs, keeping you full for hours, and they actually taste good. They've also got protein bars and cookies for a quick high-protein snack. It's Grand Marshal, World First 300 Fishing, and World First Bloodseal Admiral in the recreation of a 15-year-old video game approved. I've kind of been straying away from the gamer diet, and it's helped me get my nutrition back on track, and they're now giving me the chance to help you do the same by sponsoring this video. So if you're ready to start making healthier choices, head on over to this link and use my code for 10% off of your order. I recommend checking out their bundle builder, which is a good way to try different products at a discount to save some money. Or if you want to skip the shipping wait, you can also pick them up at your local GNC. Anyways, I feel like the sound design of WoW is one of the most unsung heroes of the game. Leveling up,
It is true.
logging in.
Yeah, this and you can actually confirm that the sound design is actually so well done, well thought out, and really made with like I don't know, just a success, because after all these years they didn't had to update it. And this is a proof that the sound design in WoW is something that, well, is absolutely unbelievable. Since they never had to change it since the beginning, since they launched the games, they never had to change most of the sound design. It is the proof of the quality of and how much attention was put into the sound design of World of Warcraft. If you ever doubted that, like, some things in WoW are actually nice, actually like awesome, here, not everything is complete waste. All right.
Bleed effects sounding like they're recorded in the bathroom. One of the most iconic sounds in the game that most would agree, I think, is the quest completion. Just listen to that. So triumphant. So beautiful. Just watch that XP roll in. Well, did you know that it was almost this? Ew. This does not spark joy.
Oh no.
Herbalism is quite a useful gathering profession in the game, as it's critical in making a variety of useful raid consumables, and it's also unique in the sense that it has a rare node spawn called the Black Lotus, which is botted horrendously because Blizzard is a small indie game developer who's incapable of banning bots. Sorry about that. That just kind of happened spontaneously. But did you know that the same was planned with mining? The equivalent would have been the rare Arcanite load, which, looking through the game files, would have dropped Arcanite.
Wait, what?
Within the spontaneous. Spotted horrendously because it has a variety of useful raid consumables, and it's also unique in the sense that it has a rare node spawn called the Black Lotus, which is botted horrendously because Blizzard is a small indie game developer who's incapable of banning bots. Sorry about that. That just kind of happened spontaneously. But did you know that the same was planned with mining? The equivalent would have been the rare Arcanite load, which, looking through the game files, would have dropped Arcanite ore, which you could presumably smelt into Arcanite bars. For unknown reasons, this would be scrapped, and as you probably know, the ability to make Arcanite bars was given to alchemists on a 2-day cooldown, and the removal left some design inconsistencies.
It was so cool because, like, basically some alchemists, they will just, like, make money out of, well, they maxed up alchemy and they can just, like, sell Arcanite bars every 2 days.
That now makes sense.
Back in the day, economy was like something really different in WoW. So this little like 2-day cooldown because you maxed out like alchemy, it was something that like some people made. Like one of my friends used to sell bullets. He was like an engineer and he made bank selling bullets. Basically, like he was a warrior, a legend, really a legendary legend within legends, and he was a warrior doing engineering, and he will like farm like basically thorium for like thorium bullets and arrows. And basically, he will sell that. And the story goes by he sold so much that not only he got like that, he was able to buy Kelsarar. Basically, Kelsarar was a rare drop that like allows you to get a quest or something. Like, let me check. So basically, yeah, basically like Kelsarar was a rare drop in in a dungeon called Dire Mall, right? And basically this legend, it was like selling like basically thorium bullets and arrows, and he sold so many that he bought himself Kelsarar with a raid to actually like do the quest. This is what I call like a legend.
The other two gathering professions, herbalism and skinning, both have nodes or mobs that require the max level 300 to gather, with skinning even needing a knife and an enchant to get Onyxia's hide, which of course was required in order to clear the Blackwing lair. But meanwhile, the highest vein for mining, at least at launch, was the rich thorium vein, which was just 275, and then much later you had the obsidian shards that dropped off of the mobs in Ahn'Qiraj that required 305. But up until then, mining curiously had two ways to increase in skill that weren't really useful at all, and that was the Goblin Mining Helmet, only equipable by those who can wear at least mail, and also the Glove Enchant. But since rich thorium veins were yellow at 300, there really wasn't any use for these skill ups other than while a player was actively leveling their profession. So the idea here is that presumably these skill ups were intended for this removed Arcanite load, and with its removal, their usefulness was diminished. No one really knows why it was removed. My best guess was that they wanted to make alchemy more useful, so they switched the ability to make these bars to them, but as a consequence of this, with the timer, that meant that they were no longer farmable, and this would of course result in the Arcanite bar being one of the most expensive trade materials in the entire game. In a previous episode, we took a peek at Early Booty Bay, which had some changes. As it turns out, Zul'Gurub also has some stuff going on that I wanted to show off here. The entrance is much different first off, and it's currently blocked off by a wall, but going through it, you would find a dark portal, which if you remember was a placeholder signifying an instance was in the works. Of course, it's inactive at this moment, but going through it, we have this glitchy little path leading to the actual area, the size of which is quite large, about the size of the entire Deadwind Pass zone, as you could tell by looking at the map here. In the middle lies a large body of water with some underwater ruins near the entrance. And as for the tour, I'm going to first stick near the water since that has the most going on, and then we'll circle back along the edge of the mountains. And what you'll find is that it's very open. At this stage, they were just getting the geography how they wanted it, and there are some ruins placed here and there, but they were done very haphazardly, as you can tell. Eventually we circled back to where we can see the entrance with these two long stretches of walls in the water, and going along the mountainside, it's much more untouched and open with little to no ruins at all. So this whole area would later be wiped from existence, and of course, as you know, ZG would eventually get its own dedicated instance where adventurers could take out Hakar and all of his priests. There are some other differences in the zone. The Curzon Cave at this point is much smaller. It's just a copy of one of the ones where it splits off into 3 paths, and it's also incredibly crowded. Hey Carl, how many mobs do you think we should put in this cave?
Oh, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 1 million?
A lot of the mobs also share the Colonel's model, and if you're wondering where he was, he's not at the end like you would expect. Rather, he's just sort of hanging out in the front lines to the right near the entrance. I respect it. A leader who fights with the foot soldiers. I mean, I'd join his cult. Speaking of which, right outside, we have more model changes. It's the same as the Bloodsill Pirates in Tanarus from the last video. I'm not really sure how to describe them. They're like evil humans or cultist humans. I'm not sure. The Rebel Camp is the same. Again, just some different models here. And lastly, off to the west, we have some stuff going on. Interestingly enough, we have this swampy area with crocolisks that never made it into the live version of the game. And lastly, for Stranglethorn, we gotta talk about the Bengal Tiger Cave. This wasn't in the alpha at this point. Rather, this was a thing through all of the release up until the Cataclysm expansion, in fact. There was rumored to be this hidden tiger mount in the game called the Bengal Tiger because you could find it in the game files. Players scoured the world in search of the mount, and eventually they were led to the Stranglethorn Vale because, as you would imagine, it held a bunch of Bengal tiger mobs. People tried farming them endlessly in hopes that it was this ultra rare drop, and eventually through some tricky out-of-bounds jumping, a lone cave was found in these mountains near Zul'Gurub. It was never designed for players to be able to reach. I think it was more just scenery for when you're flying over the zone, but there's quite a lot of detail put into it. You have this nicely lit path with a bunch of torches and crates scattered about, and this cave which holds these tarps, which vaguely look like Bengal tiger hides. Thus, the Bengal Tiger Cave was born. It was rumored that under certain conditions, a vendor will spawn in the cave and sell you the fabled mount.
Yeah, and people fell for it again and again and again for years, and they hoped, and then it was never nothing.
It only spawns at certain times, maybe once a year, or maybe you need to have this cape equipped to see the NPC, or maybe you need to be a hunter and have the tiger tamed as a pet, or maybe it was a mount that was planned at some point but was just eventually scrapped. Unfortunately, the most boring scenario is usually the case, and the Bengal Tiger never existed, and the closest that players got was the Zulian Tiger from the ZG raid, but that didn't stop it from becoming one of the biggest myths within the game's lore. The class for this episode is the Warrior, but for some non-warrior stuff to begin, I happened to be playing an Undead Male, and I noticed that their grunts were much more zombie-like when they got hit. But the first big change is that both defensive and berserker stances are just straight up trained, and they also functioned a little differently. There seemed to be no threat system, or at least it was very early, so defensive stance just makes it so you generate rage when being hit, and berserker stance grants rage when hitting an enemy, and battle stance does both, and all three stances also grant access to exclusive abilities just like live. And if you thought that rage generation was slow in 1.12, you haven't seen anything. Even on low-level mobs, you can seriously use one ability every 20 seconds maybe. It's kind of ridiculous. In the last episode, we saw that rogues were missing kick. That's because it was originally a warrior ability. This was an interrupt usable only in battle stance, as opposed to pummel, which, as you know, was berserker stance. They also have inner rage. In the alpha, it was an active ability, granting 50 rage instantly on a 5-minute cooldown. Charge is in the game at this point, but it currently just teleports you to the enemy because they hadn't finished the pathing for it yet. In fact, I remember in the early stages of the game, even when they did the pathing, it was notoriously buggy, and it would consistently phase players through the ground, dropping them into the void. Strike is pretty much heroic strike, more damage on your next swing. Cleave has a slowing component to it, and since there's no attack power stat yet, battle and demoralizing shout straight up increase or decrease melee and range damage, and there's even a shout skill that would increase as you use these abilities. But other than that, and as usual a plethora of abilities yet to be implemented, they're pretty similar. But that's about it for this one, I guess. Thanks for watching my video. There's a lot more to come in this series as usual, so if you are enjoying it, be sure to check back soon. And aside from that, remember to like the video if you liked it, because I will see you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you so much, Matt Season. So, what an awesome YouTuber. If you never discovered this YouTuber, you should really offer him a chance to surprise you. It is really awesome.